With the release of Sue Storm and the full Fantastic Four team, including Namor, now being available, it's time for another Tier 4 Essentials video. So in this video, I'll look at the various different characters that would form this team. I'll check out their upgrades from level 6 to 7 for active skills, 4 to 5 for the passive, and I'll let you know if they're actually worth upgrading, and at the end we'll do a quick summary as well. So we'll jump in and we'll start off with Namor first. Namor then is a character that if you are in an alliance that goes heavy in alliance war, he really is essential that you upgrade a vast majority of his skills. If you're in an alliance that doesn't really compete in alliance wars at all, then you don't have to do any tier 4 upgrades for him. But if we check them all out, start off with the basic, which is Neptune's Trident. So at level 6 your attack and primary target, 170% damage and 40% piercing. If you were to max this out, you get an additional 40% damage to one target and 10% piercing. Simply not worthwhile upgrading that one, even if you are taking him into war. We then have Tidal Wave, so this is the special. So with this, attack primary target for 290% damage, attack adjacent targets for 280, on target block. So if you have a defensive buff in war, that will add deflect, which counts as a block. Then you bonus attack 2 times for 80% piercing. Now if you max this out, and I would recommend doing so, you get an additional 60% damage, so that's to primary and the adjacent targets as well, and you get an additional 20% piercing for all bonus attacks, and he'll bonus attack twice if the character blocks or if they have deflect on them, so that's an additional 40% piercing damage on top of the 60% you're getting already, so that's definitely worthwhile upgrading. We then have Giganto, the ultimate, which is just insane in war. So with this, just to go over it very quickly, there's a lot to it. You attack all enemies for 250% damage. On war offense, it always crits. You clear 3 positive effects from each target. You change speed bar of all targets by 40%, and it's unavoidable and cannot be countered. It's just completely broken. Now with this, if you max it out, and it's another one I would strongly recommend you do so, you get an additional 50% damage, which is nice, but it's not the reason we're doing it. We're doing it for the fact that on war offense, you clear all positive effects from each target rather than just clearing 3. You're putting the speed bar down by a further 10% down to 50%, and again, attack is unavoidable and cannot be countered. So this is a complete game changer, and I think it's potentially one of the only ways we'll be able to counter Coulson and Shield once they actually come out, so definitely upgrade this. We then have the passive to finish up, and this is another one I would say you want to upgrade. So the upgrade order for Namor, I would say probably would be the ultimate, the special, and then maybe the passive, or the ultimate, the passive, and then the special. But this one here, you gain 10% damage, you gain 20% armor, specifically on war offense. On spawn you apply offense up for 2 turns to 3 random Fantastic Four allies or self, and also on spawn apply deflect for 2 turns to 3 random Fantastic Four allies or self, and you gain an additional 20% damage, and Fantastic Four allies gain damage. Now if you max this out, and once again you definitely want to do this, you gain an additional 10% damage and armor. Specifically in war offense on spawn, you apply offense up and deflect to all Fantastic Four allies. That's really important because you want to make sure that you're applying it to everyone, because if you apply it to a select few, it may apply it to characters that aren't really there to do damage. For example, you might apply offense up to the likes of Sue, and that's completely wasted there. Now also with this on war offense, Fantastic Four allies and self gain an additional 10% damage as well, so definitely max this out. So that's Namor. Let's check out our first Fantastic Four character, and that will be Thing. The first Fantastic Four character we look at then is Thing, and he's probably one of the most basic characters in the game. Now we start off looking at Knuckles Sandwich. So this one here, you attack primary target for 300% damage, and if you upgrade it to level 7 you get an additional 50% damage to a single target. Simply not worthwhile at all. We then have Pummeling Stone. So this one here, you attack primary target for 240% damage, and you bonus attack 1 to 2 times for an additional 180% damage. Now at level 6, because the bonus attack is between 1 and 2, it means at a minimum you can do 420% damage. If you actually max this out, you get an additional 40% damage to the primary and the secondary attacks, and your second bonus attack is guaranteed, so you'll always hit 2 times. So the difference then with level 6, again, if you only get one attack, it's 420% damage. If you max this out, you're guaranteed 720% damage, so up to an additional 300% there, so definitely worthwhile upgrading this one. We have the ultimate up next, so you attack primary target for 490% damage. The only difference is 60% damage to primary target. Once again, simply not worthwhile upgrading at all. Then we finish up with its clobbering time. So when attacked, attack that enemy for 125% damage. You gain 10% armor, and Fantastic Four and Namor allies gain 10% armor as well. Now, if you max it out, when attacked, attack that enemy for 150% damage, and Fantastic Four and Namor allies gain an additional 10% as well. Now, the armor rating on other characters isn't that high, so that 10% you're not getting a great deal out of. The counter attack is nice, but it's only an additional 25%, so for that reason, this was a close one, but this is one that personally I wouldn't actually upgrade. So when we look at Thing anyway, the only one you really want to upgrade on him, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, it means we can use our upgrades in other characters, but it would just be the special that you would upgrade there. Now, next character will be the Human Torch. The Human Torch then is an interesting character in that there is a bit of overlap in regards to what he can do if you place him alongside Namor, specifically in War Offense. Now when we get to the skill in question we'll actually discuss that, but we start off with his basic here, which is HOTSHOT. So attack primary target for 180% damage and apply bleed. Maxed out, you're doing an extra 30% damage to that one target, and it's bleed for 2 turns. I just don't see this being worthwhile due to the fact it's only on a single target. If it was maybe adjacent targets or all targets possibly, but not for a single target, so just keep this at level 6, this one. You then have the special, which is heating up, so this is where we see the overlap here potentially. So with this, you gain offense up to a maximum of 5, you apply +1 offense up to a maximum of 3, to 3 random Fantastic Four or Namor allies, and you attack the primary target for 300% damage. Now, in War Offense, when you actually spawn with Namor and you've maxed out his passive, you get offense up for 2 turns anyway. Now, with this as well, if you max it out, you gain 2 offense up for self, so it only stacks up to 3, so you would lose 1 stack if Namor was maxed out, specifically in War Offense. Also with this, you apply +1 offense up to all Fantastic Four or Namor allies and plus 50% damage to primary target. So with this one here, if you're running the Fantastic Four just in war, then you can actually hold off on this one for now. Eventually you'll want to upgrade it, but you can hold off on it on the short term. If you're looking to run them outside of war and other modes, which I would recommend because they're actually a lot of fun in Blitz and so on, then this is one that you would want to max out as well. Now, the ultimate, it's Supernova. You can't use this till turn number 3 actually, so it's not usual we see that with characters, but you attack all enemies for 340% damage, apply a fence down to 3 random enemies. The attack is unavoidable and cannot be countered. Maxed out, you do an additional 60% damage to all enemies, which is pretty huge, and you apply a fence down to all allies as well. So this is one I would say is definitely worth maxing out as well. And then finishing up here, on turn you flip 1 negative effect on self to a positive effect. You gain 20% damage, Fantastic Four and Namor allies gain 20% damage, and you gain 10,000% resistance against bleeds. So bleeds and burns are essentially the same thing in the game, so it makes sense that like a pyro can't actually apply a burn to him. But if you max the passive out, so on turn you flip 2 negative effects on self to a positive effect, which is useful I suppose, but it's not the reason you would actually max this out. The reason you would do it is that you can gain an additional 10% damage, and Fantastic Four and Namor allies would gain an additional 10% damage as well. So that's the reason you'd max that one out. So in order here, just rough order, I'd probably say the passive, the ultimate, and then the special would be the order that you would upgrade them to tier 4, so quite a few there. Now the next character will be Mr. Fantastic. Mr. Fantastic's kit is really pretty basic as well, but the way it's been set up, it can have a huge impact on your team. Now, we start off looking at the basic here, so you're attacking primary target for 190% damage, chain to 2 adjacent targets for 150 and counter attack breaks the chain. If you max it out, you're doing an additional 40% damage to all the attacks, and you chain to one additional target. Now that is decent, however his base damage is really pretty low, so you won't be getting a huge amount out of this attack, and for that reason, although it was relatively close, I would just keep this one at level 6. The special is Entangle, so this one here, attack primary target for 330% damage and 50% chance to apply stun. Maxed out, you do an additional 70% damage, so it pulls it up to 400, and you always apply stun. Now, debuff effects such as stun can completely turn the match, and you want it to be more than a coin toss whether or not it turns the match for you. You want it to be near enough guaranteed, so this is one that I would actually max out here to get that guaranteed stun. The ultimate is Orbital Assault, so this is essentially your anti-Colossus move. So with this, you clear defense up from primary target, attack primary target for 390% damage, you gain 100,000 extra focus for the attack, and it cannot be blocked. So that's all set up really to counter Colossus. If you max it out, you get an additional 60% damage to primary target. 60% is a decent amount. It's only on a single target though, and again, I've said that a few times, but this skill is to take down Colossus. It's not that useful outside of that, so just take this up to level 6 as well. The passive, we have a whole lot going on here, so you gain a whopping 50% focus and resistance for Self, Fantastic Four and Namor allies. On Self and each Fantastic Four allies turn, 100% chance to apply Assist Now to Self, Namor or a random Fantastic Four ally. If Assist Now is applied, clear blind in that target, so it's like, let's see, Miss Marvel's passive on steroids. And also on turn, choose 2 random enemies. If they have a positive effect, remove 1. Now maxed out, you gain an additional 10% focus and resistance, and on turn you choose 3 random enemies. If they have a positive effect, then you remove 1. Now with the number of positive effects we get on characters these days, it moving from 2 to 3 and only removing 1 isn't really that much, to be honest. In regards to the focus and resistance, of course the higher you can get with them the better, but you're getting an additional 50% as it is at level 4, which is a huge amount, and in most instances should be enough. So what I would say is take this up to level 4, go into matches. If you find that your actual cleanse or your debuffs aren't applying due to low focus, or you're getting a lot of debuffs on you due to low resistance, then upgrade it, but the 50% should be more than enough. Now with all that in mind, then it would just actually be the special that you would max out for the guaranteed stun, so just the one upgrade there. Now final character will be Invisible Woman. Sue then is a character that when I first looked at her, I recommended that you would upgrade everything, but due to the way her skills work, or in some instances don't really work, I wouldn't actually say that anymore, so let's actually break it down. Now the first ability is the basic, which is Cosmic Rays. So you attack primary target for 250% damage, you bury yourself for 5% of this character's max health. Now maxed out at level 7, you do an additional 40% damage, and you would get 10% barrier each turn, which is really pretty huge. Now it's not actually within the tooltip for Sue, but all characters when they gain barrier, it actually caps out at 30% of the character's total health, so you'll find a lot of times with this that you actually already have max barrier when you cast it, so I don't feel for that reason it's worthwhile maxing out. The 5% should be enough to top you up. A lot of times with the 10% it will actually go to waste because you'll be at the 30% cap, or you'll be very close to that anyway, so that's just level 6 for this one. The special is Bending Light, so with this you clear 2 negative effects from the 3 most injured allies, apply stealth to 3 most injured allies, and apply defense up for 2 turns to self and all allies. Also with this you clear stealth from highest health ally, apply free deflect and immunity for 2 turns to highest health ally. Maxed out, and I do recommend you do this, you clear 2 negative effects from self and all allies, and you apply stealth to self and all allies. So maxed out, it means that when she stealths up, rather than leaving 2 characters that can be attacked, she only leaves 1. Now this isn't working correctly at the moment, in that it's leaving the character with the highest percentage of health. So on some occasions you could have a thing in your team, but if your Human Torch has got a higher percent, even though his health pool is way lower, it will actually stealth up thing and leave Human Torch exposed. According to Cerebral, when we did ask him, it said it was the highest actual flat amount of health, so hopefully this will get fixed and it'll be more reliable. At the moment it can be a little bit risky to use, but it is one you do want to max out, because making Thing your tank is what it's all about really when it comes to this team. The ultimate is Psionic Shield, so you apply a fence down for 2 turns to 3 random enemies, and you barrier all allies for 30% of this character's max health. Maxed out, you apply a fence down for 2 turns to all enemies, and 10% of this character's max health is barrier as well. So that means each turn you would gain 40% of your health as barrier, but she has an internal hidden cap of 30% on her, which is pretty crazy. So if you upgrade it on her, she won't ever get the benefits of it. The only characters that will get the benefits of it are characters that actually have a higher health pool than herself, and her health pool is exceptionally high. So I believe in that show Fantastic Four team, the only character that would really benefit from the additional barrier would probably be Thing, but it all depends on your red stars as well. I would however recommend it's worthwhile maxing out for the fence down for 2 turns that jumps from 3 random enemies to all enemies. So in Blitz and Arena and War, that's an extra 2 characters, but if you run them in raids, for example, that could be up to an extra 7 characters. Even in Arena, for example, if you go up against an Ultron team and there's Ultron bots, then you apply that fence down for 2 turns to the bots as well. So for that reason, I would say this is still worth actually maxing out. The passive, just to finish up, is Hard Light. So when an enemy attacks a Fantastic Four ally with barrier, attack that enemy for 200% damage. You gain 10% max health, and Fantastic Four and Namor allies gain 10% max health as well. Now maxed out, when an enemy that has barriers attacked, you'll do 250% damage, and you get an additional 10% health for everyone as well. So this is one that is definitely worth maxing out. Now the order that I would go for here, I would say that I'd probably go for the passive, then the special, and then I would finish up with the ultimate. So that's the final character, so let's just bring up a quick summary now. So just a quick summary then of all the tier 4 essentials for the Fantastic Four and Namor team. Now starting off with Namor, and this is the rough order that I would upgrade them myself. I would go for the ultimate, then the passive, then the special on him. For Thing, it's just the special I would upgrade, and I've actually had more time to play around with this, and it hits exceptionally hard. It really is amazing. You then have Human Torch, and I would say go for the passive, the ultimate, then the special. Mr. Fantastic was just the special, and then finally Invisible Woman was the passive, the special, and then the ultimate. So that is all the tier 4 essentials for the Fantastic Four and Namor team. Let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree, and thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you all again soon.